we should know very shortly who will be state champion for 63. Pass into Williams. Tries to slap it away. The ball is stolen by Smedley. He shoots. He scores!
That about wraps things up for Hebron. Yes, sir. Paul Judson turns around at the free throw line and waves his hand at the rooting section. There's only 5 seconds left to play. There's nothing going to happen now. Hebron is the state champion of Illinois.
Cobb is going to control this tip. The question is who is he?
Bowman says, tip it to me. Cobb tips it. Grabbed by Smith. He shoots. He hits it. The game is over. Oregon Clark has won it.
This is Jackson with 3. Jackson lets fly. Goal! Jackson won the game. 3 in a row. Lincoln wins.
This is high school basketball at its best, in a state where the quality of play and tradition are unexcelled. It's exciting, fun, drama, exhilarating, victory, harsh defeat. It's coaches and players who've shaped the course of the game since the early years of the 20th century. This is a malady known as March Madness, the Illinois High School Association basketball tournament. Since 1963, this arena, the Assembly Hall here on the campus of the University of Illinois, has been a house of thrills each spring, the home of March Madness. Hello, I'm Tom Kelly, and it's been my privilege to broadcast 25 years of this tournament here and down the street at Huff Gym. This event has touched most every community in this great state, from Hebron on the northern border to Cobden, just a stone's throw away from the southern tip of Illinois. In between those tiny communities are cities large and middle-sized, small towns, farms, millions of people who perk up each March as winter's harsh bite turns to the stirrings of spring. We've got a full cupboard of basketball memories for you. You'll see the big moments from significant games, meet and hear the words of legendary players and coaches, while you take a memory tour through Illinois with us to recapture March Madness and see what it's all about. The first tournament was held in 1908 at the Oak Park YMCA. Oak Park High School Athletic Director Louis Omer convinced the 8-year-old Illinois High School Athletic Association to sponsor the project. Peoria charged through the 11-team field, beating Rock Island 48-29 for the title, as Lynch Conway scored 22 points, a title game individual record that would last for 42 years. The tournament indeed was underway. It would become a traveling roadshow for the next 10 years, with stops in Bloomington, Peoria, Decatur, and Springfield. Winners included Hinsdale and Bloomington twice, Batavia, Galesburg, and Hillsborough. None has won the title since. And such towns as Springfield, Centralia, Rockford, and Freeport, whose schools would win 3 scattered titles, would gain top spots on the honor roll. It was the era of the center jump, a mid-court tip-off after each score. Basketball was a deliberate pattern game then, but the tournament was on the move to a permanent location. In 1919, the tournament found its permanent home, the campus at the University of Illinois. Rockford's Rabs, the team in red and black, champions in 1911, won again, beating the Springfield Senators 39-20. After that, the balance of power would shift to southern Illinois, Egypt, and year in, year out, dominance by such teams as Centralia, Mount Vernon, Johnston City, and Marion, winners in 1921. A future Marion star who would gain coaching fame was Dolph Stanley, who, as Marion's shooting guard, remembers a night where he had one for the books.
I played in a game in Johnston City, Illinois on January the 24th, 1924. And I scored every point in the game. Naturally, everybody says, what was the score? It was an overtime game. It was tied up 8-8 at the end of the game. And I scored 2 baskets in the overtime, and we won the game 12-8.
Soon the tournament needed a bigger arena to meet the demand for tickets. So in 1926, it moved here to its new home until 1963, the George Huff Gymnasium. And what a place it was to watch a basketball game. You could shoehorn 6,900 people into Huff. The seats literally were on top of the court. Loose balls and out-of-control bodies flew into the crowd. It was so loud you could barely hear yourself think. And with that huge map on the wall with 16 blinking lights locating the finalists, the Sweet 16, it was a carnival-like atmosphere.
Man, that was a pageant. Excitement, anticipation, and it's always been exciting. No one can give an answer to why it is exciting, except it is a beautiful thing. Here come 16 teams. No one seems to know who's going to win it. And after playing about 4 days, you have a winner.
Morton of Cicero brought the title to Cook County in the Chicago area for the first time in 1932. But a school from nearby Harvey would gain everlasting fame a year later.
Jack Light was a type of coach that wanted to see some speed, wanted to entertain the public as well as himself if we could pass the ball behind our back, between our legs, and just run, run, run. And he instilled that in us with angles, of course, of breaking for the basket. And we were named the Flying Clouds by a great gentleman who was Pat Harmon, who was a sports writer in Champaign, Illinois at that time. And the Flying Clouds indicated that we were moving quickly.
But at the state finals, Springfield coach Mark Peterman, who had led Canton to the 1928 title, grounded the Flying Clouds.
There wasn't many teams that could run with us at Thornton and compete with us. So we held the ball out in the final championship game, and finally Nesbitt made a couple of free throws and 2 baskets, who was high scorer at the time. And we won 14-13. After, I remember, in 5 seconds, they had the last shot at the basket.
Boudreaux, a future All-America at Illinois and Baseball Hall of Famer, was captain as a sophomore and held that leadership role on a permanent basis. Thornton went to the title game the next 2 years, but fell short.
But then coming back 2 years later, Mark Peterman beat us with Scheffler as a great basketball player for Springfield. But it wasn't the slow break. In those days, if you scored 29 points, that was a lot of points.
It was Springfield who stopped Thornton in 1935. Peterman's slow break earned the Capital City Senators their second of 3 titles. The first came in 1917, the most recent in 1959. That was a superb team coached by future State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Ray Page. 6'7" Tom Cole anchored a swarming defense and a strong inside game for a team that went 33-1. Springfield beat West Aurora 60-52, holding Bill Small to 18 points, while Cole punched in 26 to take home the title trophy. The Senators reached the semifinals again in 1967, led by Dave Robish. Robish, a future NBA player, set a tournament scoring record with 152 points, an average of 39 a game, as the Senators took the third-place trophy home to the state capitol. There would be another Springfield winner from another part of town, and we'll tell that story later. By 1940, the center jump was gone as the game began to take on a modern look. The decade began with future Illini whiz kid Andy Phillip leading Granite City to the title over Heron 24-22. But the spotlight shifted some 70 miles east of Granite City to a tough mining community, Centralia, coached by the demanding Arthur L. Trout.
The boys' welfare was number one, and sports come second. But he was a great coach, way ahead of his time.
Thanks to Coach Trout, Centralia has enjoyed a glorious basketball legacy. Trout's Centralia teams won 809 games from World War I until after the second global conflict. The Orphans, named by Coach Trout for his favorite movie of the silent age, Orphans of the Storm, have won more games than any other high school basketball team. Coach Trout led his coal miners' sons to titles in 1918 and 1922, but his most famous teams would come at the outset of World War II, the era of the most publicized high school athlete to that time, Dwight Dyke Edelman, whose kiss shot was the kiss of death to Centralia opponents.
Why it looked like that you brought the ball up and kissed it before you shot it, and that's why it was named the kiss shot. Your nose and your chin would always be dirty from the ball, you know, and bouncing on the floor. Oh, you had to have your feet on the floor. There's no jump shooting at all. If you had the one-handed shot or something, hey, you didn't play. He didn't believe in that. And just like this kiss shot, too, you'd bring that up just a set for a second. He always said, you know, when you shoot a gun, you don't just shoot it. You don't bring it up. You kind of sit and bang it. So you'd have to wait a little bit to get your eye on the basket. He had all kinds of philosophies that I think were very good.
Like Bo Jackson of today, Dyke could do it all. He was an Olympic high jumper, an outstanding end and punter in football, but his best sport was basketball. In 1941, Centralia appeared to be on the verge of a title with the team Trout called his best, the Wonder Five. But something happened on Saturday afternoon in the semifinals. Morton upset Centralia 30-29. Dyke was the only returning starter in 1942, but this time the Orphans would have enough to beat Ernie Evelyn's previously unbeaten Paris Tigers 35-33.
That's the biggest thrill I ever had out of athletics, was winning the state tournament in 1942.
Even better than the Final Four or the Olympics?
Yes, I think so.
Rose Bowl?
Yeah, I believe that. I truthfully say that.
Dyke Edelman starred at Illinois, winning the Big Ten silver basketball in 1949 as he led the Fighting Illini to the Final Four. After pro ball, he returned to Champaign, where he is the chief fundraiser for Illini athletics. Centralia has had other runs at the big prize, finishing second in 1946. By 1963, the Orphans of Coach Bob Jones had their best team since the Edelman era. They were a matter of seconds away from a fourth title, and they had possession. We'll discuss that wild finish later. Dolph Stanley was born in 1905 and has spent a lifetime in basketball. He developed outstanding teams at Beloit College.
We were rated among the top schools of the nation with a set a stadium record in Chicago. So now, was it my techniques that did it? Was it my knowledge that did it? No. It was the players that did it, of course.
But his greatest fame came at the high school level.
I wanted back in the high school where that old spirit of go, 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 and where athletics really meant something, and a coach could straighten a lot of guys out. And I've kept many young men out of jail through basketball.
Dolph Stanley has taken every high school he ever coached to the state finals. Equality, Mount Pulaski, Rockford Auburn, and after a forced retirement at age 65, Rockford Boylan. But it's Taylorville where the Stanley legend was cemented. His stars were Johnny Orr and Ron Bontemps. The Tornadoes breezed through the 43-44 season like a whirlwind. They won all 45 games, routing Elgin 56-33 in the title game to become the first undefeated champion.
We had an out-of-bounds play that featured Johnny Orr and Bontemps. And Johnny went in there wide open, nobody on him. He made the basket, he came ran over to me and grabbed me in his arms and said, "Coach, I kissed the basket," just like you said. You know, you love those guys.
Ted Beach and the Champaign Maroons reached the championship game 3 straight years in the mid-40s. They sandwiched a 1946 title against Centralia with second-place finishes to Decatur in 1945 and Paris in 1947. Paris had won the championship in 1943, and this time, Ernie Evelyn's Tigers beat Harry Combs' Maroons 58-37. Robert Owens led the Tigers with 22 points, tying the title game record set in the first tournament in 1908. Southern Illinois, Egypt, ruled Illinois high school basketball after the war, thanks in large measure to Coach Merrill Duster Thomas of Pinckneyville. A Duster Thomas team was drilled to perfection on fundamentals, and they never hurried. After all, Tom Milliken, you can't score without the ball, can you?
He had a tremendous ability to to make you respect every opponent. You didn't fear them, but you respected them greatly. And he had us, we knew deep down that if we didn't compete at our highest level, that we would be beaten.
In 1948, Pinckneyville cruised in high gear with the outcome never in doubt, rolling to a 65-39 victory over Rockford East. Tom Milliken contributed 8 points to a pair of 21-point performances by Bob Johnson and Frank Gladson.
At that time, when you called a timeout, there was a short era that you couldn't go over and talk to the coach. So there we were on the floor. Rockford had called timeout, and in our huddle among 5 players, you now look up at the scoreboard and you knew you had the state championship locked up. And so there's great conversation between Johnson and Gladson and Davis and Clifford and Milliken. Let me score some now. You've had your points. I'd like to get my name in history. We're going to be a state championship, and let me shoot the ball. So I can remember those vivid conversations.
After that 1948 title, Pinckneyville seemed to be eternal bridesmaids, winning the third-place trophy 3 straight years from 1953 through 55. The Panthers had another run at a title in 1968, this time in Class A, but they fell short in the closing seconds, 62-58 to Pana, still seeking another title. That Southern Illinois dominance continued at mid-century as the Mount Vernon Rams opened the way to the modern era of basketball. Coach Stan Changnan could sense the game changing from slow, flat-footed pattern play to an up-tempo mode featuring an innovative style changer, jump shots from everywhere. His leader was Max Hooper.
Stan Chagnon was an innovator. He did a lot of things, I think, that probably hadn't been done before. Certainly the jump shot was in its infancy at that time. And when I first came to high school, the jump shot was not around. But we did use that. Stan spent a lot of time in practicing and teaching a jump shot. And he did a lot of things which, you know, you watch the pros today and they play and a lot of things happen that we would not have allowed to happen because Stan was a stickler on fundamentals. The jump shot was taught to where you hit hard in one spot, went straight up, couldn't float because that created a focusing situation with your eyes. And Stan was a stickler for fundamentals.
Mount Vernon had waited 29 years to win a second state title. The Rams beat Hillsboro 45-39 for the 1949 crown, but the best was yet to come. For Max Hooper and his all-state running mate, Walt Moore, were just juniors.
We had the makings of a good ball club. And of course, the next year we go undefeated. But we had the makings, and I think because of Stan Chagnon's character, we were able to control emotion. Stan's even temper kept us together, and I think it was because of him that we were able to win it that first year, undoubtedly.
In the first 41 years of the tournament, only Elgin's Maroons of 1924 and 25 won back-to-back titles. Since then, just 4 other schools have accomplished that feat. East St. Louis Lincoln, with 3 straight in the late 80s, leads the way, joined by Class A Lawrenceville in 82 and 83, Dalton Thorn Ridge of 71 and 72, Rockford West of 55 and 56, and Mount Vernon of 49 and 50. The Rams of 1950, with the 1949 title in the trophy case, stormed through this tournament on a double mission to go undefeated and win consecutive championships. Mount Vernon improved each game as Hooper saved his best performance for last.
Stan could have taken me out earlier, and he didn't. He was certainly aware of it, I'm sure. I had tied the record the year before at 34. And then came back, and it was just a great thrill for us. And of course, going undefeated, never did that again in any sport, either at the college level or amateur level. So it was a great thrill to go undefeated, and a great tribute to Mount Vernon.
Hooper never played better, leaving the title game scoring record in tatters with 36 points, a mark that would last 22 years as Mount Vernon beat Danville 85-61 to go 33-0.
We know that the sport is for one purpose, and that's to make character in young people. And I know that the Illinois High School State Tournament has added an awful lot to an awful lot of young people.
Mount Vernon would add another championship trophy 4 years later in perhaps the most controversial game ever played in Illinois, against DuSable of Chicago, a story to come later. After Freeport's Pretzels won their 3rd title in 1951, Stardust fell on Illinois high school basketball. The dream of the underdog, the little David, would be realized. Hebron, then as now, was a tiny dairy farming community at the gateway to Wisconsin. There, 5 boys created an Illinois legend that will live as long as basketball is played.
Of all the trophies that are won by the state, this is the most prestigious trophy there is. Kids dream of it from what age? 4 on up through high school?
I think what Paul said is very true, because we started playing in our driveway when we were in 4th and 5th grade, and we've got a rim that was made down at the blacksmith shop that was put on the backboard on the garage so we could play, and that's where we really got started.
Bill Schultz, Don Wilbrandt, Ken Spooner, and these twins, Paul and Phil Judson, literally took center stage in this cramped gym while capturing the hearts and imagination of an entire state. The Hebron Green Giants were the big men of 1952, and for the first time, their exploits were seen throughout Illinois on a medium undergoing growing pains, television.
Brother, that heartbreak is very real here on the team that can't go home with the bacon. There's Paul Judson letting one go.
And there was some concern in the beginning that if we began to televise, people would stay away because they could sit at home and see the game on television, or the games rather. But it turned out to be just the opposite. It whetted the appetite of people.
Because of the first televised state tournament game, many people bought their first television set. I've had many people tell me that if it wasn't for you playing, even playing in the state tournament, we might not have had a TV quite so soon.
I've had people in the hospital say they've had operations, and that's the first thing they asked for was the TV so they could watch the state championship trophy several times.
The Green Giants weren't fazed by the big crowd in Huff Gym. Coach Russ Ahern had prepared them well for this moment.
What he did, too, was really keep our heads at a good level. He realized we had a lot of publicity that year, and he really worked hard letting us know that, hey, this is fine, but keep things in perspective. And we did that pretty well.
Quincy, led by All-American Bruce Brothers, was a tough opponent, but Brothers fouled out with 4.5 minutes to go, and Hebron's moment was near. It was 58-all at the end of 32 minutes, setting up the first overtime title showdown. Hebron dominated in the extra play, and it was all but over when Paul Judson let loose in celebration at the foul line.
But it was obvious. It's something that we looked forward to all year, and we saw that it was climaxing into a state championship, and it was just kind of hard to hold back the elation at that time.
Hebron became the only team ever to win the Illinois state title from the district level. With 96 students, the little McHenry County School was the smallest ever to embrace the biggest prize in Illinois high school basketball.
And I had a coach, Rich Heron, and he said, when you guys played, he said, I spent $3 for a state championship ticket. He said, they were $1.50, but he said, I had to see you guys play, he said, and I bought them for scalper's price.
I remember we were ranked #1 most of the year, but yet everybody considered us the underdog. And that was basically because we had 5, 6 players, and we were from a school that only had 96 kids in it, and they said, how could anything like this be this good? And they just didn't expect us to do what we did.
One high school in Illinois has a most unusual championship record. Lyons Township of LaGrange has won 2 state titles, both times going unbeaten. The Lions went 29-0 in 1953 and won all 31 times out in 1970. The 1953 team was led by the most publicized player in the country, 6'7", 240-pound Ted Chiazza, an athlete whose high school exploits literally stuffed several scrapbooks to overflowing.
I don't know, I guess it was just the charisma we had together. It's like any school, once you start playing ball with a number of young people and continue going, and having an outstanding coach such as Greg Sloan, and who was a very disciplinarian, I think that we were lucky, like many schools, to have everybody in the right spot at the right time, and it just gelled.
Coach Greg Sloan had assembled a powerhouse, augmenting Chiazza with Leon and Joel McRae, Nate Smith, and Chuck Sedgwick. The Lions came on a sectional collision course with unbeaten Kankakee, led by Harv Schmidt.
Harv Schmidt was awesome. I mean, he almost broke her back because it never looked like he shot the ball. He threw the ball like a pitcher.
you know, from the back of the hand and just threw it, and that thing wouldn't hit anything but net.
Schmidt fouled out after scoring 37 points, and the Lions won, going away 83-74, led by Kayaz's 31 and 16 free throws, all by Sedgwick. In Champaign, LaGrange was gruff in Huff. All business. They opened the tournament beating Chicago DuSable 85-68, despite the fine shooting of Paxton Lumpkin. If there had been any pre-tournament jitters, they were gone now.
Well, that first day we walked in, or the first game we walked in there, we just looked around. And you just feel, you know, the nervousness. And, of course, all of us were nervous until the official threw that ball up, and then we had to forget it.
Next came a 75-48 rout of Decatur St. Teresa. Kayaza scoring all of LaGrange's points in the first quarter, en route to breaking Max Hooper's tournament one-game record with 38 points. Pinckneyville was Saturday afternoon's victim, 78-65, in another powerful outing. The LaGrange Lions were roaring in high gear now. That set up the showdown with Peoria High's Lions and All-State center and football quarterback Hiles Stout. Peoria's Lions had advanced to the finals after defeating sentimental favorite Danville Schlarman 66-58. For certain, the Lions would roar Saturday night.
Yes, that's where Hiles Stout and his crew were. And excellent ball player. Probably the best center I've ever played against that year.
It was difficult for any team to match up with them. We thought we did a pretty good job. The first half, I remember we went in 7 points down, and we were in the ball game most of the time, but ultimately, why their size and experience and good coaching paid dividends.
Hungry LaGrange grabbed the winner's share in this battle of the Big Cats, completing a perfect 29-0 season, beating Peoria High 72-60. With Kayaza and Sedgwick back and talented underclassmen on the way, a repeat seemed imminent. But this Huff Gym victory scene would not be rerun in 1954, as Morton of Cicero derailed LaGrange by a point in the regionals, ending that dream.
At that time, I thought we were a real excellent ball club and could play with anybody in the country. Today you see the teams, I don't think so. I don't think so, because they're just fantastic, these kids today, just fantastic.
We'll discuss the 1954 tournament in a few moments, but before we do, let's take a look at the magic 2 years of Rockford West, the Warriors, and Coach Alex Sidargas. Few teams ever worked harder or came back from a greater deficit than the 1955 Rockford West Warriors. West had beaten conference rival Elgin out on the road during the regular season, and the Maroons were out for revenge. Postman Tom Alley and guard Gary Smith staked Elgin to a 24-10 first quarter lead, and they continued that surge up to 40-27 at the half.
And the guys were tired. The thing you want to remember, too, Kaufman and Parker, my two guards, both had 4 fouls at the half. And I'm telling them, fellas, we got to come out and press them. There's no way. We got to press them.
Rockford West came out with a smothering press. The Warriors cut the margin to a point after 3 quarters, but fell back by 6 late in the game when Nolden Gentry went up for a 20-footer, scoring while fouled. In the rules of 1955, the bonus was in effect. Gentry then sank both foul shots, a 4-point play. On the inbounds play, pressing Rex Parker drew a charging foul. Parker hit both free throws to give West 6 points in 1 second and a tie. Then came more heroics. Johnny Wessels missed, but it was Gentry again with the big basket on the follow-up to make it a 61-59 lead for Rockford West. Elgin had 7 seconds left, but Smith, losing track of time, dribbled out the clock. And the title went to Rockford in the last game of the 22-year-old Sweet 16 format.
The kids were tired. It was in fact, Wessels, after the game, passed out. I went up to him and was going to say, "Nice game, John," and his eyes rolled up and he passed out completely.
Rockford's 6'7" towers, Gentry and Wessels, were just juniors and coming back to anchor a shot at the double. Rockford West had the players all right, but so did Edwardsville's Tigers. Coach Joe Luco, later a state legislator, was blessed with a pair of all-staters who would star for Illinois, Manny Jackson and Governor Vaughn. Jackson and Vaughn led a late Tiger charge that gave Rockford West a scare. After Wessels put West up by 5, Jackson and Harold Patton cut the deficit to a point again. Finally, before Bobby Washington iced it with a free throw to give the Warriors their bookend trophy, 67-65. Rockford West is a high school closed in June of 1989. It'll be a middle school now, but the trophy's in the case and the name on the gymnasium wall speaks eloquently for the success attained over the years. When the Sweet 16 reconvened on March 17, 1954 in Huff, the country was on the verge of historic change. It was 2 months before the Supreme Court would rule unanimously that separate but equal schools, the practice of segregated education, was unconstitutional. Several black players were scattered throughout several tournament teams, but one all-black team from the south side of Chicago would make history, the DuSable Panthers. Until 1946, there was a grouping of 12 all-black high schools in southern Illinois who did not play in the tournament. They were known as the Southern Illinois Conference of Colored Schools. During World War II, they conducted 4 tournaments, playing a championship game in Huff Gym before the regular Sweet 16. Crispus Attucks of Carbondale won the first 2 titles, Mounds Douglas the last 2. 2 of those schools remain open. They are East St. Louis Lincoln and Lovejoy Community.
The downstaters, who were accustomed to an entirely different style of basketball, as you know, tabbed us a 5-ring circus. They didn't understand what we were doing, and it took the state 20 years to catch up to what we were doing in 1954.
And now everybody plays your style.
That's right. That's right.
DuSable was the first all-black team to represent Chicago or any other community in the state finals. The Panthers played the opening game of the 1953 tournament against LaGrange. Jim Brown was on the bench, assisting Art Shea.
LaGrange had a great ball club. And as you know, they went on to win the 1953 state championship. We were just not up to that level in 1953.
DuSable was outgunned 85-68, but this all-underclass team was ready to come back the following year. Jim Brown was now the head coach. He had an all-star lineup of McKinley Cousin and Sweet Charlie Brown at forwards.
He was probably if not the greatest shooter I ever coached, he certainly ranks in I would think, in the top 5.
Shelley McMillan at center.
He was probably the best rebounder I ever coached.
Carl Dennis, and the first true point guard in Paxton Lumpkin.
Paxton was a genius. He was the greatest basketball player I ever coached, and to this day I'm confident in my own judgment that he's the greatest basketball player ever produced in the city of Chicago. Where Paxton's coming along today, he would do more things on the basketball court than Isaiah Thomas. And they don't come much better than Isaiah Thomas, as you well know. Nobody has ever been able to dribble a ball with the dexterity and the fluid attributes of a Paxton Lumpkin. I haven't seen a basketball player, particularly a guard, handle a team as deftly as Paxton could do it. Paxton had the greatest hands, the quickest hands of any basketball player I ever coached.
The Panthers blasted through the first 3 games, routing tiny downstate Bowen and Quincy in the first 2 rounds. And then on Saturday afternoon, they put it all together against Edwardsville and Deadeye Don Ole. What a show that was. Lumpkin scored 31 points and set up countless other baskets as the Panthers beat the Tigers 89-73, a tournament record. They would face Mount Vernon for the title. The hot-shooting Rams had an outstanding pair of guards, frail-looking Don Richards, and the team leader, Albert Avant. Mount Vernon routed Pinckneyville 70-44 in that other semifinal. In that title game, neither team could gain more than a 2-point advantage throughout 3.5 quarters. Disputed calls in the closing 3 minutes erased 3 DuSable baskets, and Charlie Brown, Dennis, and Lumpkin fouled out as Mount Vernon iced a 76-70 victory to gain the title.
If we played Mount Vernon 100 times, we would probably beat them 99 times.
DuSable partisans long have claimed that Mount Vernon got all the breaks. Mount Vernon fans, of course, say the game was decided on the court. Whatever, Mount Vernon has the title, and DuSable still is remembered and a symbol.
We were really what they call the door openers, you know, and it's really tough. It's really tough, Jeff. I guess that somebody must get the job done, and we were thrust in that position, and we gave it our best shot.
As DuSable ran up and down that floor at Huff, they left much more than memories of a bitter defeat. For DuSable had paved the way and opened the door for black athletes and predominantly black teams. The inevitable breakthrough came 4 years later when a magnificent team from Chicago's West Side made history. They were the Marshall Commandos, led by Coach Isidore Spin Solario and 6'8" sophomore George Wilson, already the dominant player in Chicago's public league. Wilson had a smooth hook shot and was one of the first players to dunk in a game.
Well, he made all the difference in the world. You know, you get a kid 6'9" that could get the rebounds for you, throw the ball out to a guard, and then lead the fast break. He was something else.
Ben Solario, the coach, was the type of person that kept all of us in line. And once you do that, most of the time you will come up a winner. We never had any fights. We never had any dissension. We were just about all for one, one for all.
Rock Falls had lost just once thanks to the play of high-scoring forward Ken Siebel and future major leaguer Gary Kolb. Tournament scoring records were smashed in the quarterfinal opener on Friday afternoon. Rock Falls ran off a 101-76 victory over Danville Schlarman, a game that saw Schlarman's Jerry Cummerly shattered Ted Kayaz's individual record with 49 points. Marshall battled its way to the finals, beating Elgin by 20 in the Super Sectional, defending champion Heron by 13 on Friday night, and tough Aurora West in the semis. Like DuSable 4 years earlier, Marshall entered the championship game unbeaten in 30.
Solario always had a habit of bringing us together right after the game. He said, okay, fellas, that one's over. Next time, you know, one at a time. That was his philosophy. And we just, I guess, again, came together and said, we're going to get it done.
They didn't have the quickness that we had, and it really did not worry me about playing that club.
Rock Falls took early command, leading by 6 at halftime. They increased the lead to 9, and Wilson had 4 fouls, his teammates picking up for him. The Commandos chipped away as Rock Falls' lead melted to 1 after 3. Then with Wilson in foul trouble, Bobby Jones, M.C. Thompson, and Steve Thomas took over. Jones and Thomas rained in basket after basket as the Commandos outscored the Rockets 18-11 in the fourth quarter, bringing Chicago its first title, 70-64. They had won all 31 games they played.
Mayor Daley, we went down to his chambers, and we were honored by the city council, and there was a ticker tape parade downtown Chicago, and we had a big assembly program on that Sunday morning at Marshall at the high school, and so there were a lot of accolades after.
We became part of history. So no matter whatever happened in Illinois high school basketball, we were the first, and that was the way we felt after we won, and then on the way back. But, of course, on the way back, you know, we had to sort of, oh, wait a minute, we just won the state, but now we had to go home and play for the city championship. And the Catholic school has always won. So now, you know, we had to regroup, get mentally ready to play at the stadium.
Marshall frosted that championship cake, beating De La Salle a week later before 15,000 in Chicago Stadium for the city title. With Wilson and Thompson returning, Marshall was favored to repeat in 1959, but they lost to Waukegan 63-62 in the Super Sectional. The Commandos took no prisoners in 1960. They were deep and well-balanced as Solario's players mashed the field. Tiny Bridgeport, led by All-Stater Steve Cunningham, was hoping to pull a Hebron, but Marshall was not buying it.
They were bent on really, at least they wanted to maintain their supremacy, and they certainly didn't want to lose.
We sorry we had to do that to Bridgeport. We were going to make sure another Waukegan never happened.
Wilson at 6'8" controlled the game inside and out as the first modern small forward forerunner of the Magic Johnson Larry Bird type. Wilson became a high school All-American and most recruited player in the land.
I would move him outside and move Franklin into the pivot. When we were pressed, I would have George come up and help break the press or even bring the ball down. So he did so many things and could do them well.
The title game was no contest. The Commandos routed Little Bridgeport 79-55 as all 5 starters scored in double figures. Chicago was here to stay.
Marshall, that west side of Chicago, that was a rough, neighborhood. And here, this Solario would take us and talk to us like father, big brother, and we just respected him.
And there was just a sense of pride that these youngsters had, and I hope that they took it out and took it with them out in the world and knew that if they worked hard, they had an equal opportunity to achieve as anybody else.
Change had come to the country and to the Illinois High School Association. In 1956, concerned with the time spent away from the classroom, principals cut the Sweet 16 in half to an Elite 8 in Champaign. The Sweet 16 would survive in the form of a super-sectional format with first-round games played at 8 area sites. It would also allow more fans to see the tournament in person. On the basketball court, the emergence of Chicago had brought quickness and the mobile big man into the tournament to stay. But at the other end of the state, another coach was hard at work polishing a system that would see his teams win 792 games and his school 2 state titles. The school was Collinsville. The coach, Virgil Fletcher. The system, the ball press.
It's a great psychological defense, and one of the things I always told my players, and I'm sure it's true, that the other team can't play the way they practice. So if you're playing good defense, actually an interception is better than a rebound, because most of the interceptions out in the middle of court someplace, and that gives you a chance to take the ball from the basket.
Collinsville high school teams have been playing basketball since 1907, winning a higher share of games than any other team in the United States. The K-Hawks had a tough time getting through the tough St. Louis Metro Regionals and Sectionals until 1957. Terry Bethel, a smooth 6'7" center, and forward Tom Jackson led unbeaten Collinsville to its first championship game. The opponents would be the clever, tough Heron Tigers, led by first-year coach Earl Lee. Lee had succeeded Lee Kabuti, who took his picking, ball-handling, deliberate game to Champaign. Heron got Bethel out of the game with 3 first-quarter fouls, setting up a nip-and-tuck battle all the way.
Whenever he'd set his screen and roll to the basket, well, we just always made sure that we had our players in front of him as he turned and rolled, and he would continue to look back to where the ball was at, and while he was looking back to the ball, he'd run into our players.
Well, that's a charge, back charge, They wouldn't call that today. They'd give them a place to light, but back in those days, Terry'd go up and they'd move in, and when Terry had a tendency to move back with his turnaround jump shot, and they got 3 fouls on them.
Heron won it 45-42, avenging a regular season defeat to Collinsville. Coach Lee left for Cahokia the next season with a coach's dream: 1 season, 1 state championship.
Well, they did everything you'd ask them to do, and they were a great bunch of basketball players, and they made themselves basketball players. They weren't large. They just practiced and worked and did the things that they could do the best, and that's what made them the great team that they were.
Virgil Fletcher rolled up his sleeves and finally put together his dream team in 1961. Nobody came close to the K-Hawks thanks to the ball press, great teamwork, and a pair of all-staters, Fred Riddle, son of the principal, who did not need help from the front office, and Bogey Redman, the strong man with the velvet touch.
You'd go up for a shot and there'd be a guy in front of you, but you'd see your teammate right under the bucket all alone, nobody on him, and you just dish it off to him and there's 2 points. So we did that a lot. If I remember right, that happened a lot.
That's one of the reasons we shot 55%.
Right, because all the shots are about this far from the basket, you know.
Redmond scored 31 points and Riddle added 24 as the K-Hawks buried Thornton of Harvey 84-50 in an outstanding display of all-around basketball.
Everybody was a pretty smart athlete. Everybody was a good athlete. And then whatever coach said, that's the way it was. There was no other way to do it.
Well, I think we shot for the state championship that year, and I think we worked harder. All my teams worked hard, but the 61 team worked extremely hard. And we spent a lot of time in practice before school and at noon hour and after school. And this team didn't make very many mistakes either.
Redmond was starring at Illinois by 1965 when Collinsville gained the finals again against perennial power Quincy.
Virgil had a really outstanding ball club pace. He had a good ball club. They deserved to be state champs. We deserved to be state champs, had we won the ball game, because it was that kind of a game.
This team executed, did everything as well as any other team we've ever had. Their defense was perfect. The execution of defense, the rotation, everything was perfect.
Collinsville, behind the shooting of Dennis Pace and Jack Darlington, took a 24-20 lead at the half, and the K-Hawks stretched out to a 7-point lead after 3. Then came a Quincy charge.
With about 5 minutes left in the ball game, they got a 5-point lead on us. And then it was exactly that. It was just a cat and mouse game. We made a couple runs at them, with a couple steals, and we got back to 1. But we could never get back into, the lead of the ball game.
It wasn't enough, though, as the K-Hawks won their second title in 4 years, 55-52. Collinsville would make other runs. Fletcher's K-Hawk teams gained Sweet 16 spots 14 times, more than any other coach. It appeared the K-Hawks would give Coach Fletcher a retirement present wrapped in a big bow in 1978. Kevin Stallings and John Bellabradic powered Collinsville into the semifinals against Lockport in a showdown of unbeaten number 1 and 2 teams.
And I thought we would win, but you don't always win because you think you're going to win. They say that's a good thing. If you think you're going to win, you're going to win. But we did everything but hit the ball in the hoop.
That 55-53 loss ended the title dream. But Collinsville finished in style, beating Rockford East 96-65 to put the button on one of the greatest coaching careers anywhere.
I would hope that the players and the citizens of Collinsville would remember me as not only a good basketball coach, but a good citizen who tried to teach players something about life except besides basketball.
The 1960s were years of turmoil in America and years of change in the Illinois High School Association throne room. 8 different schools would win titles, and by the end of the decade, the balance of power had shifted to the north. This is a man for all seasons, especially tennis and basketball. John Schneider's New Trier Trevians finished second in the 1989 AA Girls Tournament in a tough overtime loss to Marshall's Lady Commandos. The turning point came when New Trier was assessed a technical for not picking up Marshall on defense.
And officials said we weren't close enough on defense. Well, I didn't want to be too close on defense because they're going to throw it into her and she's going to stuff it on us. So we wanted to stay back a little bit, but they didn't think we were close enough. When we call a tee, they make both free throws, and it just sort of took the heart out of our kids, and we lost the game. We lost the game by 6, 56-50, but I was still really proud of our kids.
But the Schneider story has many more chapters. The first prominent one came in 1960 when he was a 25-year-old Frosh sophomore coach at Stephen Decatur High School under the legendary Gay Kintner.
Gay got down on his hands and knees in the locker room at the halftime and gave him a great pep talk, and his face was real red, and we got back up and we sat down on the bench 30 minutes before the game starts. He falls over and dies right in front of me. We had the funeral in the gym. There were 10,000 people in the gym. His son, his open coffin, his son walks down the middle of the center line, kneels down in the coffin and kisses him, and there wasn't a dry eye in the place. I mean, it was something else.
Schneider and fellow assistant Jack Kenny picked up the pieces and took the Running Reds to a fourth-place finish in the 1960 tournament. That was Decatur's first appearance in the finals since 1955.
The kids I think they sort of dedicated it to Gay.
Before that, Kintner's Reds had been a perennial power. They won the title in 1931 and again in 1936. In 1945, they beat Galesburg 73-72 in the quarterfinals. It was a back-and-forth overtime thriller, old-timers say, that was the best game in the pre-television era of the tournament. The Running Reds went on to beat Champaign for Kintner's third and last title. In 1962, Schneider had another fine team peaking in March. The Running Reds had a tough opponent, Carver of Chicago. It would be the last state title decided in Huff Gym and one of the best. Carver was led by one of the truly great players in state history, Cassie Russell.
He had the right stuff, and he worked hard. And I guess if I want to leave a message in here, I want to be sure that having the right stuff is only 10% of it. 90% of it is working when you got the right stuff. Because they have 1,000 guys that write stuff, but they don't work hard, so it doesn't mean anything. He worked hard. He worked awfully hard to develop his game.
Of all the basketball players I've seen, I think he's the best high school player I've ever seen. We could not stop him. We put a kid on him named Bulldog Johnson. We played man-to-man defense all the time. And Bulldog tried to stop him, and he did a good job, but he still got 26. And it was really he was the hardest player to stop. When we'd press, he'd bring the ball up. He'd take it inside. He did a heck of a job.
The Challengers and Reds went nose-to-nose to the wire, and then came two of the strangest plays in tournament history. Carver's Bruce Rackett threw the ball toward an official. Then, with the game tied, Rackett mistakenly threw the ball into the hands of Decatur's Jerry Hill.
50 seconds to play, and the ball is suddenly flipped on a mistake to Jerry Hill. Decatur gets it.
What happened was Bulldog Johnson, who, as you can tell from the name, is pretty tough. I mean, his name was Jim. We called him Bulldog. He set a screen on Rickett and just creamed him. I mean, he just creamed this kid. And the kid was out on his feet. He really didn't know where he was. And then when they're holding the ball at the end, he throws the ball right to Jerry Hill. And I know the reason he did is because he was dazed. He really was dazed from that screen that Bulldog Johnson set on him.
Thousands of people reacted the same way that I did. They felt badly, and they wrote to him. He got a lot of letters relative to that, just thousands of them.
Kenny Barnes was fouled with 5 seconds to go. After a timeout, Barnes sunk the first shot to make it 49-48 Decatur, but he missed the second free throw.
And now with a bonus shot, Ken Barnes is ready. 49-48, Decatur has the lead. 6 seconds left. That one misses. Out of bounds. Ball belongs to Carver. 2-1. You better throw it. There's the gun.
It's a once-in-a-lifetime type of a thing, you know. If you ever have a state championship team, you're really fortunate. I just was lucky, you know, to be at the right place at the right time. Everybody can relate to March Madness. I mean, it's just one of those things that everybody gets fired up about. It's like getting a new car. You get the fever. You know, sometimes you get a new car fever. Well, you get basketball fever at the end of February and the start of March. And everybody has a chance, too. That's another thing I like about it. Everybody has a chance. You can be 0-22 and still have a chance to win the state.
With Cassie Russell off to Michigan and future All-America glory, Carver lost 5 games in the 62-63 regular season, but the Challengers had another powerful force, Joe Allen.
Joe was a monster. Joe made the team work because he was so strong, and when he got a position, when his side of the basket was pretty much just him, everybody else went somewhere else to rebound because he was not only strong, but he was hard. So when he came down, if you wanted to be in there, you'd have to be hard too. Otherwise, kids moved out of the way.
The first state championship to be decided in New Assembly Hall was a fitting nail-biter and one of the most memorable. The tournament itself featured a controversy that threatened to tatter the fabric of the association itself. The rules of the IHSA then permitted an athlete to compete as long as he had not reached his 19th birthday prior to December 11th of the school year. The focal point, Rockford Auburn star Jasper Robinson. who turned 19 during the year and was playing under a court injunction. The issue was his birthday. The answer would decide his eligibility.
All kinds of hell broke loose. The judges ruled that I had to play him. I mean, I got a letter saying I had to play him, even though the state said he couldn't. But we went ahead and won, got down into the state.
A family Bible showed his birthday to be December 24th, 1943, after the cutoff. An Arkansas birth certificate contradicted that, saying Robinson was born December 2nd. Springfield Lanphier solved part of the problem, beating Auburn in the quarterfinals 58-56 on a last-second feed from Don Bose to Calvin Pettit. Later, a court ruled in favor of the IHSA, a landmark decision defining the issue of age eligibility in high schools. Auburn had to forfeit its victories. As for Robinson,
he's held several jobs here in the community since, and has a family. Married a very outstanding young lady.
In the title game itself, the Carver-Centralia title game was a physical contest. Centralia battled back to take a 52-51 lead with just over a minute to go when things got wacky. Suddenly, the pressure seemed to affect both teams. Centralia turned it over, then Carver returned the favor as Robert Cefax threw it away, giving Centralia the ball. The Orphans called timeout with 13 seconds left, and Hawkins made a vital substitution.
We took out Cefax and put in Smedley. Now, Cefax is 6'6" and Smedley is 5'6". We put him in because he's quick and he's got good hands, he's tough.
Who will be state champion for 63? Pass into Williams. Tries to slap it away. The ball is stolen by Smedley. He shoots. He scores! 7 seconds. Timeout, Centralia. In just 6 seconds of action, the only time he would play, Anthony Smedley became one of the true heroes in the history of Illinois high school basketball.
The ball was loose on the floor, and Smedley picked it up and went to his favorite spot. And I think he did it without thinking. He went in there and shot, and then asked me later, do you think I should have shot the ball? I said, yeah, I think so. You should have shot it. I'm not altogether clear on all the detail, and I'd love to say it was a great coaching crew, but it was just saying, oh my, here we are again, and you know, just I got to do something. Kids expect me to do something, but it wasn't anything that was planned. It was just changing so the students would have some confidence that we had some sense of what was going on. But I just hoped something would happen. It did in that case.
Centralia had one last chance, but the trophy would go to Chicago, with Carver winning in its second try for the title.
I think it makes a point that seems to me to make sense for sport, that it has some values other than a game. And we're getting away from that, and that's the point of our institute, to try to make those arguments. What the role of school sport is. I think it's different. It's not to be like pro sport. It's to be different. It's for kids to think, we won. And everybody to feel that they won. Everybody in that little community felt that they won. You know. And everybody in the community felt that they lost when we lost. And that's what sport is about. That's what we're trying to sell. It's a tough sell to the educators anyway, but that's what we're trying to sell.
Few schools are fortunate to get a chance to win one state championship, let alone two. Perhaps once a decade, a little David emerges from the pack to capture the interest and the imagination of the entire state. That was the case in 1964, when the Hebron story seemed to be developing a sequel at the bottom end of the state. The place was Cobden, a settlement south of Carbondale, and all the elements of drama were in place. 147 students enrolled in the high school. No team ever had a more colorful nickname, the Apple Knockers. They were massive, 4 starters, 6'5" and over. Jim and Chuck Neal were the brothers. Ken, Jim, and Bob Smith, cousins. Team star Ken Flick was a rare married student, and the team had to play with a heavy heart.
Tom Crowell. I had to have letting the boys pick the most valuable. They get just elect somebody, and they whatnot, and they elect a couple kids, and they vote on it. And he was our most valuable as a junior. He was swimming with 3 of the big boys, Smith and Neal, and they're at Crab Orchard Lake, and they got all fingers and little peninsulas, jut-ins and jut-outs, and they're going across. We're going across from here to there, and it looked like 40 yards. And a couple said, hey, I can make that. We can go over there and we'll go that way. He said, I can't make it. I'm going around. And he was walking the shoreline, probably 4 or 5 foot out in the water, going to walk around and go to where, rather than swim across this finger, he's walking around, fell in the hole, panicked. And these three, by the time they got to hit, one did get a hold of the young man, grabbed him, but he was just overpowered. He was so strong, he pulled him down, he broke away, and Tom never come up.
Cobden had to face Pekin for the title. Pekin was coached by Dawson Dottie Hawkins. Dottie Hawkins had coached Peoria Central to second place in 1953. Success continued when he moved across the Illinois River to Pekin in 1960. He knew how tough it would be to face an overwhelming sentimental favorite.
The superintendent of schools at that time, F.M. Peterson, came up to me and he said, Donnie, he said, you think that our kids will be affected by the fact that most of the fans in the gymnasium are going to be for Cobden, and they'll probably let our team realize that by the big fan approval noise when they come on the floor. So he said, why don't we just go out with Cobden? When they go on the floor, we'll take the floor, and our kids will be thinking that they're cheering for them and not Cobden.
I said, apparently he's going to wait till we all go. Or do you even want to warm up? What do you guys say? Let's go, Coach. We don't care who they cheer for. Let's get out there. So we just went out and we went on the floor. And they did. We all went together, you know, in the roar. So no one got quite the edge there because you don't know who's wrong.
Pekin was a smaller, quicker team, and they had an outstanding long-range shooter in Dave Golden. Cobden stayed with Pekin, refusing to buckle. Finally, the game came down to the closing 2 minutes, with Pekin up by 2 points and a timeout.
Our strategy, for the most part, was whenever the score was tied or we were ahead, we were going to take as long as necessary to get the best shot possible.
We're slow. We're big and we're slow. He was small and quick, and they had good fundamentals, and they spread us, and we couldn't stay with him one-on-one. But if we drop into our zone, he'd come hold the ball again. And we were behind. We had to pursue it.
Playing man-to-man defense in the title game for the first time in the season was just too tough a challenge for the Apple Knockers. Pekin won it 50-45. Nobody would ever forget the big team from the small school.
We had a reunion in Cobden, the 25th year reunion, and those people down there still feel that they won the state tournament. They don't know who beat them, but when they took a poll at that reunion, and all the people that they talked to admitted that Cobden won that state championship.
But Pekin earned a rightful place on the honor roll of Illinois high school basketball, and for Dottie Hawkins and his school, the good times would find a pleasant sequel.
Winning it once was beyond my expectations, but then to win it twice in a period of 4 years was unbelievable, really. You had to be lucky.
Hawkins was blessed with two outstanding frontline players, Barry Moran and Fred Miller. It was a combination that enabled Pekin to dominate the '67 tournament. Miller had the hot hand for Pekin, hitting for 36 points to beat Carbondale. Coach Hawkins, proud of his team, wanted to be remembered for much more than offensive production.
Like most coaches, especially some that have had some success, defense has been the strongest part of my philosophy down through the years in basketball. If I was known as anything in basketball, I would say that it would be as a good defensive coach. That's how I'd want to be recognized.
That Pekin victory also marked a watershed in tournament history. For the next 9 years, the tournament would become the private preserve of the Chicago area, and the structure of the tournament itself would undergo permanent change. The first signal came in 1966, a year prior to Pekin's second championship, when Thornton of Harvey stormed through the Assembly Hall en route to the school's second championship. Thornton's title game opponent was perennial bridesmaid Galesburg. Johnny Thiel's Silver Streaks were no match for Bob Anderson's Wildcats. Dale Kelly was stifled in the finals as Lamar Thomas directed the Thornton victory. Thomas scored 16 points as his backcourt mate Rich Rottery hit 10 of 15 shots in a 24-point performance. With Jim Ard controlling the boards, it was all Thornton. The game was over for all practical purposes at the half when Thornton opened a 22-point lead and coasted in 74-60 for the victory. 2 years later, Galesburg, in its 22nd tournament appearance, would be shooting for its second title after 4 championship game losses. The unfortunate Silver Streaks would have to face one of the strongest teams in tournament history, the Evanston Wildcats of Coach Jack Burmaster.
That was the start of a combination of finesse and power. I think we had everything in those days and in present days that it takes to make a successful basketball team.
Evanston had a pair of quick, clever guards, Walt Pookie Perrin and Ron Cooper, a dead-eye in Bill Patinas, and power inside supplied by 6'6" Farrell Jones and Bob the Enforcer Lackey.
He refused to lose, number one. He had such great quickness, and he could get up on the board. He was a good shooter, you know, not a great shooter, but all those things combined with his instincts made him a great player.
This team set the table for the Chicago area dominance by its power. Ironically, Evanston, in its 4 tournament victories, scored one for numerologists with 70 points, no more, no less, in each victory. They put the title away early and went on to beat Galesburg 70-51.
Isn't that funny? Every game downstate, our final score was 70 to 58, 70 to something, 70 to something. Evanston has been blessed not only in basketball but in many sports. We've got a trophy case that goes from here down to the next block, I think. And our biggest problem is keeping them dusted and looking well.
The following year belonged to Evanston's longtime rival, Proviso East of Maywood. Proviso had been known for football and the play of future NFL Hall of Famer Ray Nitschke. Now the school's best-known athletic alumnus is NBA star Glenn Doc Rivers, but Rivers never played on a title team. That tradition started in 1969 when Tom Milliken was blessed with All-State center Jim Brewer and a fine supporting cast.
Jim Brewer was probably the finest 6'6" athlete I've seen play in high school. He was the best defensive player I've ever seen in high school. Most people don't really realize how good he was. And then we surrounded him with 2 great defensive guards, Walter Williams and Billy Allen. People thought they were small looking at Jim Brewer, but they were 6'2" and had wingspans and tremendously long arms. And then up front we had Harvey Roberts, who was about 6'5" and 200, and then we had Pete Bazeas, who was an excellent shooter. And the thing that made us so good is that we took every team right out of the game defensively with our defense.
But a lot more was happening in Maywood and at Proviso. The town and school were hotbeds of racial conflict, but this team pulled the community together.
It was a time when school was closed on a couple of occasions. Many of our black athletes were being pressured by militants in the community. You don't want to play for that white honky. So it was an extremely tough time. And I was just so fortunate that my athletes believed in me and their parents believed in me.
The Pirates beat Peoria Spalding 58-51 as Brewer scored 17 and owned the boards. A lot more was won in the community.
Our state championship team was just the greatest tonic to this school because our kids had gone through such negative PR that all of a sudden the state championship gave them something very positive to think about. And I think that was a big turnaround in this school. From that day forward, we've been climbing back to the mountain, and today race relationship is terrific in this community.
Those were wonderful years at Proviso East. Milliken stepped up to principal in 1970, and another Southern Illinois native, Glenn Wittenberg, took over. Wittenberg ran a tough operation, like a drill sergeant.
People took him a while to get used to his Marine-type tactics, but when they found out what a genuine man he really was, and that he was tough, but he was tough with everybody, and he was fair with everybody, and became a great coach for us.
But he got results. In 1974, the Pirates were in the AA Finals against top-ranked Bloom of Chicago Heights. Bloom was led by Player of the Year Audie Matthews, but somebody forgot to tell Joe Ponsetto and the Pirates.
Joe Ponsetto, the Godfather.
Yes, sir.
Joe is so much of a different individual than people perceived him to be. Joe looked like he was some dumb athlete, but Joe was very bright, got along tremendously well with the black athletes in the community. In fact, he grew up in the community and played with them, and they loved him.
Proviso East trailed 43-40 after 3 quarters and then turned it up a notch, overtaking Bloom down the stretch to win the title 61-56.
Our 69 state champ helped pave the way, and they just became overachievers. They just that night beat a team that was probably better than we were, but those kids didn't believe it out there on the floor, and that's what counts.
Something old and something new, something borrowed and something blue was an appropriate theme for the 1970 tournament rolled into one package. Coach Ron Nikovich brought a second title to Lyons Township of LaGrange, the old and new, borrowing the delightful tradition of an undefeated season for the blue-clad Lions.
There's something that separates a lot of teams with great talent from those who have great talent, go on to become champions and then do the ultimate and to be an undefeated champion at a time when there was one class. We weren't divided now. We're talking about the whole state.
LaGrange had to face East Moline in the finals, and for 3 quarters it was a ball game.
It was one of those rare games, too, when the 2 teams that were vying for that #1 poll spot went into the final game, and it was decided the way it should be.
But Lions had 2 outstanding players that made the difference. Marcus Washington.
What a kid. I mean, what a player. Kid just loved to play, just loved to be on the floor. Would never tire of playing basketball. Liked to be all over the floor. Rebound, shoot from the outside, play defense. He loved that. A great player, a great young man.
And Owen Brown, who would die at age 22, felled by a heart attack in a pickup game.
Owen Brown, to me, is still alive, you might say. It just doesn't seem quite possible. A young man at 22 in the prime time of his life could be taken from us as he was. But it was a real shocker for us all.
Owen Brown was outstanding against East Moline, scoring 24 points while grabbing 24 rebounds. Whatever doubt remained was removed as LaGrange outscored East Moline by 14 in the 4th quarter to win going away 71-52.
These guys saved their best quarter for the last. The final quarter of the state championship game, I believe, our guys outscored East Moline, I think it was 24-10, and won the walk in the 4th quarter.
That was only a prelude to the team that would set the standard of excellence for the 70s, Dalton Thornridge. Ron Ferguson was the coach, but Captain Quinn Buckner was his coach on the floor.
He was probably the coach on the floor, off the floor, and before the season, during the season. He was a man for all seasons, and there's no question that he's certainly the finest person of his ability that I've ever been associated with.
And it was important and it is to this day important for me that when I'm on any team, that the individuals succeed, because when the individuals succeed, the whole process moves forward, and the rest of it takes care of itself.
This was a close-to-perfect high school machine. In 1971, the Falcons faced nearby Oak Lawn for the title. C.J. Kupek, the big man, and guard Jim Bosinski led Oak Lawn. Buckner held his mostly underclass teammates together with 18 points. And then with Thornridge up 52-50 came the critical moment.
I was trying to get across to my squad at that particular point in time that please, don't give him the 3-point play. Don't give him the 3-point play.
CJ had a chance to tie it and got a drive to the basket, and I was there and had a thought to go for the ball, and the last minute I backed off.
Yeah, I think he shot, and they got a rebound, and I think it was a young man by the name of Arnold got the rebound right under the basket, and he hurriedly tried to put the ball up and kind of crotched it there and didn't get it up over the rim, and the gun went off.
We were arrogant, but it was controlled arrogance. We were we knew that we could play better than anybody that we could play against. What was amazing to me is that age, we played as a team with that controlled cockiness or arrogance.
With one title in hand, the big challenge awaited the following year. Nobody would come closer than 14 points. But as good as they were in the regular season, Thornridge got only stronger in the tournament.
We just played. We were kids just playing to have fun. And I look back at it now, and I didn't realize how good we were until after I got away from it. And I look at some of those films, I said, boy, that team wasn't too bad.
Quincy had outlasted East Aurora in the semifinals in a 107-96 shootout. But they were facing a whirling dervish for the title.
The fear of the press, I think, bothered more teams than you can believe.
There's that zone press again. It's just devastating. And the guards on Quincy are a little bit small, and they're having a rough time seeing over those outstretched arms.
Buckner on the steal, converts it. The Thornridge pressure left Quincy down 57-26 at the half. Finally, in the third quarter, Ferguson stopped the press and let them play a more relaxed game. Boyd Bath scored 37 points, Greg Rose 26, and Buckner 28. Mike Bonzak and Ernie Dunn were outstanding as Thornridge kicked off the Class AA format in style, 104-69.
We just pounded that team, and that's in the championship game of the series. And that gave me some inclination of how good a team we had.
It's just one of those things you can't explain. You know, one of the type of game that you coach all your life to try to have one of those kind of things happen, and they very seldom ever you know, they probably don't happen to most people. And then to have it happen in the state championship game is just beyond belief.
Thornridge carried a state record 58 consecutive victories into the next season, a record that would last for 10 years. 1972 is the start of two class play in Illinois. All of that the brainchild of Toluca's Chuck Rolinski.
You could see the shift shifted to the industrial cities. They're getting better coaching now. The players are starting younger. They're going to these great camps. The players, I'm talking about the industrial cities like, you know, anyone like East St. Louis, Champaign, Peoria, the Chicago situation, the suburbs. There's no doubt about it. Basketball is being played all year long. And they have so many more kids to choose from.
I personally hated to see us go to two classes because I think we've taken some of the Indiana lure away, because I played on a school with 400 students and we beat the big school. And I think that's part of the aura that I'd like to see back.
In a class system, you're number one in your class. But I was proven wrong. And as we know now, the small schools even outdraw the large schools in the state tournament.
When that power started shifting to the north and to the industrial cities, there is no way schools of 700 and below could ever win the state, I don't think. It would be 1 in 50 years, and who wants that?
For better or worse, a new day had dawned and there was no turning back. It rekindled interest in communities that never came close. But it did mean an end to the little David dream of slaying the dominant, larger Goliaths. Fortunately for Class A, a fine team stepped forward to play convincing, winning basketball and give the concept a boost. Lawrenceville, led by Coach Ron Felling.
We just felt if we ever got there, we're going to win it. That tournament was ours. We were there 5 times and won it 4 times.
Felling was fortunate and happy to have the presence of Rick Leasty and a young blonde guard who could shoot the lights out from anywhere on the court, Jay Scheidler.
He could shoot it, so to speak, from downtown, and he really didn't. He had unlimited range.
Scheidler's range was so amazing, they called him the Bionic Boy. And his 93-point day in the 1976 semifinals and third-place game made him the best-known player in Illinois.
It was just a good feeling to have the crowd react like they did at the moments when I did break the records and when they had taken me out of the game and things, standing ovations and stuff. It was just an emotional high that you had to go through and be a part of to really explain. But it was a neat feeling. You just have to take the moment for what it is and get as much out of it as you possibly can. Because if some good things happen to you while you're there, you will definitely remember it the rest of your life. And
after winning titles in 72 and 74, Lawrenceville had to wait another 8 years for another chance. They cashed in 82 with another Leasty, Tim, joining 2 All-Staters, Doug Novsek and Marty Simmons. Lawrenceville won the school's 3rd title, beating Monmouth 67-53. The following year belonged to Marty Simmons. Simmons earned the title, Mr. Basketball, in a record-setting year for the Indians. They extended their unbeaten record to 68 games as Felling and Lawrenceville beat Flanagan 44-39 for title number 4.
You know, the best teacher that you can probably remember is your hardest teacher. If you think about your best teacher, you probably didn't like him maybe at the time or her, but they were the most demanding on you, and if you stop and think about it, they were your best teachers. And I think your best teacher is the one that's going to be intolerant, not let you make mistakes, not let you slide by, going to be demanding on you. And that's what we're trying to do here.
The Class A meet has produced many big moments. Take 1976, when Mount Pulaski pulled out a 59-58 title victory over Rova of Oneida. In 1979 was the play of 6'8 sophomore Walter Downing as New Lenox Providence beat Havana 46-33 for the championship. Brian Sloan, son of Chicago Bulls all-time star Jerry, became Mr. Basketball as he led McLeansboro to the 1984 title over Mount Pulaski 57-50. The Foxes became the 12th unbeaten champion in tournament history. Perhaps the most powerful team in Class A history was Providence St. Mel of Chicago in 1985. It was a team that scored in clusters led by All-American Lowell Hamilton. Providence St. Mel beat Crispin 95-63 for the title. There were many who believed this St. Mel team just might have been able to win the AA tournament as well. In 1989, the Class A tournament belonged to the Indians of Carlisle and their splendid 6'8 forward Tom Michael and his 6'7 running mate Jason Peters. Michael hit 10 of 12 from the floor in a 28-point performance as Carlisle beat Rock Island Alaman 65-56. Michael scored 121 points for the tournament. As the decade of the 80s came to an end, it became obvious that the two-class system had survived and thrived and was here to stay.
I think today if you would vote on class basketball, it would go 95% to 5.
Back in AA, the Chicago area was in the midst of a decade-long run in the throne room as 5 of the next 6 tournaments would have Chicago area finalists and 7 of the next 8 would have a Chicago area champion. The 1973 tournament ran against form. Neither Chicago Hirsch nor New Trier East of Winnetka was supposed to be in the title game, but there they were. For a half, it was a good game, thanks to a strong defensive performance by New Trier East.
We looked like ragamuffins out there on the floor, actually, you know, but we played tough.
But Hirsch had 2 outstanding players for Coach Charlie Stimson. Ricky Green and John Robinson took over in the second half. Robinson owned the inside, and Green exhibited the quickness that would characterize his All-America play in college and later in the NBA. Hirsch pulled away in the second half to win convincingly 65-51. After Proviso East's 1974 victory, another Chicago school, Wendell Phillips and Larry Williams, beat Bloom 76-48. Phillips almost made it look easy. They were that dominant. The tournament needed a thriller, and in 1976 it came in a heart-stopper. West Aurora appeared to be on the verge of that city's first title when Morgan Park and Levi Cobb put on a stretch drive. Stop, look, and listen.
Makes the next one. 44-43 in the backcourt with the ball. Scramble for it. Bill Warden wants a timeout, but he can't take one. Jump ball. Cobb is going to control this tip. The question is who is he? And Bowman says, tip it to me. Cobb tips it. Grabbed by Smith. He shoots. He hits it. The game is over. Morgan Park has won it.
Just when it seemed that the Chicago area would never lose, downstate rose again with an assured championship as Peoria met Springfield Lanphier for the title. It was a game filled with ironies. Both teams were nicknamed the Lions, and both coaches were high school teammates from Springfield Lanphier. Bob Nika of Lanphier and Bruce Boyle of Peoria.
Bob was a starter on that team and a very fine basketball player. After high school, he and I went to the same college, Illinois State, lived right next door to one another for about 3 years up there at Illinois State.
Few public schools in America can approach the tradition of Peoria High School. Founded in 1856, it is the oldest high school in Illinois. This building, opened in 1916, is the third to bear the name. The Lions Gymnasium reflects that tradition. The huge foyer is a showcase for Peoria's championship teams. A special niche honors the first state champions of 1908. Picture and plaque, a huge trophy case to honor other championships. Only 4 of 6 trophies from title games are on display. The 1989 runner-up has a place of honor, as do other trophies. 1 second, 2/3. Standing alone in the center is that tall trophy earned by the 1977 AA champions of Illinois. It was significant that the school that won the 70th title had won the first. Dwayne Banks and Tony Gower led the push to the title 72-62, despite the play of Lanfear's future White Sox second baseman, Tim Hewlett.
Tim was an overachiever, not taking anything away from him because he was an outstanding athlete, but he wanted it real bad. And when he played basketball, that's the way he played. He just never would give up.
I don't think either one of us were disappointed too much, so I know Bob said after the game when we won that championship that he just as soon lose to us as anybody in the state, and I said, well, if it had been the other way, I'd have felt the same way. Likewise, we've always gotten along well. We still see one another quite a bit.
Chuck Bisher took the Lions to their next title game in 1983 and again to a heartbreaking finale in 1989. More on those games later, but for now, a word or two on Peoria tradition.
And we're fortunate. At Peoria High School, we've really never had to go the extra route to motivate our kids because of all the trophies, because of all the pictures.
Well, I think the tradition. I think with the Bruce Boyles, the Dottie Hawkins, the Dick Whitakers, and the coaches and the players, and a couple state championships, and just winning successful basketball, and it's I think that's people take a great deal of pride in that.
Every tournament has its stamp, its signature, usually a team or a special moment, perhaps a game-winning shot. In 1978, a young man leaped into the spotlight where he's remained ever since.
A number of the people that have followed basketball in the state of Illinois for many, many years have said that Isaiah could possibly have been the best high school player ever to come out of the state of Illinois. I certainly think he ranks with the top if he's not the best.
1978 presented one of the most unique matchups in tournament history. Westinghouse and Mark Aguirre against St. Joseph of Westchester and his lifelong pal, Isaiah Thomas.
Tougher than nails. Always smiling, so therefore he had the right temperament, but yet he was very, very tough. He's such a competitor that he never wants to lose.
That tournament showcased the impressive talents of Isaiah Thomas that continued to develop his senior year at St. Joe's. Anyone who saw him then knew he was special.
He could take over a game, and that's rare when a young man his size can take over the game.
He's the best I've ever seen. He plays now exactly the way he played back in those days. Same style, same determination, aggressiveness. So a lot of people say, boy, you see that? Yeah, I saw it before. And of course, he does things today also that you might not have seen before. Every once in a while, he'll create something that he doesn't even know he does.
Not to be forgotten is the impressive performance of the unbeaten tournament champions, Lockport. Bob Basarich's Porters met all the challenges. They ousted Collinsville 55-53 in the afternoon, knocked off Thomas and St. Joseph 64-47 for the title. It was a fitting conclusion to an all-winning 33-0 year that made this ride through the streets of Lockport a Sunday afternoon pleasure trip to remember. They weren't supposed to get past the quarterfinals, let alone take home the championship, but Maine South in 1979 was the type of team that overcame each obstacle in its way to win the title. Unbeaten Quincy was favored to win it, but Maine South took charge in the second quarter and never looked back. The Hawks made virtually every shot count, connecting on 33 of 50 from the field, 66%. Quitman Sullins preached teamwork, and the result showed. Jeff Baker led the Hawks with 26 points, but the parts were interchangeable as Dan Fiddler added 23, Chris Theodore 16, and Jay Heiler 12. The Hawks broke the Quincy press and went on to take the championship to Park Ridge 83-67. 1980 provided an intriguing matchup of big men. Effingham 7-2 Uwe Blopp against 6'10 Russell Cross of Chicago Manly. In this game within a game, Cross was the winner. He outscored Blopp 17-8, setting the tone for his teammates. The Flaming Hearts had the tournament's hottest shooter, blonde bomber Mitch Arnold, who scored 26 from all over the court. But Manly's balance and 13 points by Leonard Jones off the bench were too much and the Wildcats won the title 69-61.
It's a town where high school basketball since 1934 has meant so very, very much to the whole population, and they've supported it like no other community has for as long a time as they have. I really believe it's the basketball town of the United States.
It is a remote city standing alone among the farms of western Illinois, a river town, a key railroad stop. It's Quincy, the gem city. It's a place that can stake a strong claim as basketball capital of this state. From November to March, the pulse beat of Quincy throbs in this place, Blue Devil Gym, where inside a tireless ritual fills Friday nights with a mighty roar when the Blue Devils take the floor.
There's always been a Blue Devil ceremony going way back with Coach Hanks and perhaps before him. And then each head coach, when he gets the job, has the right to change it any way he wants to. And teams want to come to Quincy just to see the ceremony. And I think it's worth about 8 points a game. It's about 8-0 when the Quincy game starts.
No high school has made more appearances in Champaign than Quincy. Among Quincy's 27 state finals are titles in 1934 and 1981, 4 second-place finishes, 4 thirds, and 1 fourth. Players are legendary. Bruce brothers, Tom and Michael Payne, Larry Moore, Keith Bruce, and Dennis Douglas, to name a few. Quincy also has had some outstanding coaches. Jerry Leggett.
In Quincy, and right or wrong, it's so, you are judged on your won and loss record.
And his predecessor, Cheryl Hanks.
My game was never complicated. You know, it wasn't based on X's and O's. You know, you got to shoot the ball or you can't score naturally. And if you're a 50% shooter and you're going to miss 3 shots, you got to fire up the next 3 in a heck of a hurry because you're going to make your percentage. And that was the philosophy I lived with. And I think guards like to play for me. At least every guard that's ever played for me all the way through college would love to play for me. At least they told me that, you know, because I let them shoot the ball, and if they missed 5 or 6 shots, I didn't take them out of the ball game. And I'm on their case if they don't shoot the ball from then on, because if he's a 50% shooter, he's going to get to that percentage in a 32-minute ball game, and they like that, and I like that. It's not a matter of Hanks put that program all together. Had not this city been receptive to that type of a program and still dealing with high school kids, you know, we weren't trying to make professionals out of them, and we were just having a lot of fun doing it. So it takes a whole community to put that together.
Cheryl Hanks had moved on to become coach and athletic director at Quincy College when Jerry Leggett brought the 1979 Blue Devils to Champaign undefeated.
Keith Douglas was our star. Keith Douglas was an all-stater. I always list the 79 as my favorite team. It wasn't my best team. In the first round, we played Manly. Manly was the Chicago City champion behind their all-state player and all-American player, Russell Cross, who was 6'8" or 6'9". And even though we were ranked number 1, we were sort of the underdog in that first round game. But we won that game by 17 points when our all-stater outscored Russell Cross quite badly. In the semifinals, we went against a very tall team, Bennett Academy. That game went into 2 overtimes and was decided by a steal at the 10-second line by little Mike Rudd, and he stole the ball and was chased down the floor by the center at 6'8", and very wisely he went up at the very end, and instead of shooting it, he passed back, and a little freshman won that game. That little freshman's name was Bruce Douglas. So we got through the semifinals.
Leggett's tiny Blue Devils nearly pulled it off, but ran out of gas in the title game against Maine South.
They really solved the press, and being the size we were, any team that could solve that press was going to give us a real bad time. As I said, we had the 2 things going, the press and the fast break, and they also rebounded. They were on the offensive boards, and we couldn't start our fast break. That was a great, very intelligent Maine South team.
In 1981, Leggett had a machine. The Blue Devils had the complete package. 6'10" Michael Payne was the dominant big man in the state. But the key to this team was the play of the Douglas brothers. Older brother Keith Douglas had been the all-state mainstay of Leggett's 1979 runners-up. But 2 proved to be better than 1 in 81, with sophomore Dennis Douglas supplying the power inside and junior Bruce Douglas, the top high school guard in America, controlling the game at the point. How good were the 1981 Blue Devils?
I don't mean to to sound like you're bragging. I really believe that the 81 Blue Devils were the best team that I've ever seen play at the state tournament in Illinois. Another thing that seems to support this view is that they were the national high school champions in 1981.
Quincy still had the Douglas brothers in '82 and 2 goals to win a second title and to go undefeated again. The Blue Devil streak reached 64 by the semifinals with Mendel Catholic of Chicago. It went down to the closing seconds.
How they won the game last night. It comes way out to Hampton. Hampton shoots a 25 for a goal! It's good! The game is over! Do you believe that? The game is over! Do you believe that? Hampton has won the game!
I didn't hear the horn. And while they're celebrating, I'm pointing out to the referees that the horn hadn't sounded, so even though we're 1 point behind, that we should, be able to take the ball out of bounds, even though there's no time on the clock.
On their feet. Dennis Douglas throws it length of the court. To Bruce Douglas, he missed it! Oh my God! And they had it! They had it right there! That shot was almost in. The game is over! There's Mike Flaherty, the winning coach. Quincy has lost.
We were down. Having lost after 64 straight wins, losing in the afternoon, coming back that evening for the third place game. I'm an advocate of the third place game, by the way. But we didn't seem to be playing very well against Marshall. And again, it went down to 1 second to go, and we're 1 point behind, and we had the ball down at the other end. Bruce Douglas made his final play in Illinois high school basketball, and it was a spectacular play. He's supposed to catch the ball and tip it back to our center, laying it up. It went a little bit long. Bruce went and got it anyway, flew clear out of bounds, completed his assignment, tipped it back to just perfectly to the right place, and Hughesman laid it up to win the third place game. And it was the exact same play with the second option as we'd run 3 hours before that in our semifinal loss.
In 1987, Peoria Manual was unbeaten in the quarterfinals when Quincy struck again.
8 seconds on the clock. Maybe in the season. 5 seconds. Bailey wheels it up. Scores with 2. 2 seconds with 1. Quincy leads on a miraculous shot by James Bailey.
I think it's the last little pocket of complete support by any community on any a high school basketball team in Illinois, and I think that the Quincy people are going to continue to be like this. It wasn't Cheryl Hanks, it was the Blue Devils and Quincy High. It wasn't Jerry Leggett, it was the Blue Devils and Quincy High and Quincy community, and I don't think that's going to change. It's going to be Quincy town supporting their main interests, one of their main interests in life, and that's the Quincy High School Blue Devils. That's going to continue.
As Quincy moved off stage in 1982, East St. Louis Lincoln's Tigers stepped forward and took over. Coach Benny Lewis had put together an excellent club that got past Marshall 57-54 in the afternoon and continued its march to the title. Mendel was emotionally spent from the Quincy victory. Lincoln didn't miss a beat as Todd Porter led the Tigers to their first championship 56-50. No one in his wildest dreams could have predicted what would develop in the Lincoln story as the decade wound down. In the first half-century of the tournament, Springfield area basketball was dominated by the Springfield Senators until a dynamic young coach issued his challenge. Springfield Lanphier was opened in the mid-1930s. Success came in 1953 with the arrival of Arlen Lober, a coach who wanted his players to have fun.
I thought that our style of play was the way kids would play on their own. If you saw them out playing on the blacktop, that's the way they'd play, going up and down the floor. And also, I felt it gave my players the best chance to develop their individual talents.
Lober's so-called organized gym class team opened up the game, passing over the defense for easy baskets. His first great star was Calvin Pettit, who led the 1963 Lions to the semifinals against Centralia. Lober turned over the reins in 1974 to his sophomore coach, Bob Nika.
It was really nice to have one of your own players come in and continue on and have success after you, but that's Bob's doing, and that's up to him now, and he's done a wonderful job, and I just hope it continues on into the future.
I was born and raised about 3 blocks south of Lanphier High School, and I guess I'll be carted away when my last day is. I live about 1.5 miles north and east of Lanphier now, but Lanphier it's not only a coaching job to me, it's been my whole life.
Lanphier lost by 10 points in the 1977 finals to a better Peoria High team, but by 1983, the Lions were ready to take over the state. Even though nobody gave them a chance, they were unranked. All signs pointed to a rematch of the 1977 Peoria High Lanphier title game. The pathway to the finals was littered with danger for each, but last-second shots would tell an exciting story.
Being shadowed on the box and one, and he wants the ball.
He's got it.
Could boil down to an offensive rebound right now.
Williams shot it in and won. The game is over. Central wins. Central wins 58-57. Williams shot it in at the gun. I don't believe it.
All right, inbounded to Briggity. Down to 8 seconds. Remember, we're tied. Up quickly, right corner to Horton. Horton launches the jumper. No good. Rebound. Gamble is good.
In my opinion, I've never coached a basketball player any better than Kevin Gamble. He can play the strong side guard, the weak side guard. He can go underneath. He can just do everything. And the more important than that is you couldn't find a nicer person than Kevin Gamble. They just don't make them. He's just a great person.
In the title game, Gamble led the way with 19. Horton added 18. They needed it all as Lanphier came on down the stretch to win Game 30 and the school's first championship 57-53.
I remember some elderly gentleman after the game we won in '83 when we won it, and I remember walking off the floor with my son Moose, and he called me to the side. I don't even know who he was, and he says, I want to tell you something. He says, you think it's great now. Wait till about 20 years from now when you're sitting in a rocking chair and you think about it.
Lanphier had gone the next year, returning in 1985 behind Mr. Basketball, Ed Horton. It came down to one of the most exciting title games in history, a double overtime duel with Mount Carmel from Chicago's South Side. Regulation play ended at 44 all, and then after a scoreless first overtime, Mount Carmel's Derek Boyd broke the Lions' hearts as the Caravan became the only private school to win the AA title.
And I look back at it thinking that I had the opportunity to get the coaching job in the first place, and then being a champion 3 times in a champion, that's just unbelievable. And now I think, I wonder if there's ever a chance before I quit that I'll get back again. And you have to believe percentage-wise there's not, but you never know. But it's been way, way more than I ever expected.
The 1984 tournament was hard fought from Friday's opener to the end. Favored were the Evanston Wildcats, coached by former Centralia star Herb Williams. Everett Stevens was a one-man gang for Evanston. He single-handedly pulled out a 65-63 overtime victory over Benton in the quarterfinals. Then on Saturday afternoon was Stevens again, leaping to the hoop as the Wildcats beat St. Joseph 58-56. In the lower bracket, West Aurora had a relatively easy time of it. Champaign Centennial and Roger McClendon could not compete with the acrobatic drives of Kenny Battle. Simeon had defeated Robeson 44-42 in the Chicago Public League final, thanks to the play of Ben Wilson, who would be murdered the next fall outside the school. Wilson again led the way against Rock Island in the quarterfinals. And in the matchup with West Aurora, Simeon had too much firepower as the Wolverines beat the Blackhawks 67-58. In the final, Evanston's defense shackled Wilson, holding him to just 4 points. But Tim Bankston more than made up the difference. Bankston powered his way for 25 points, and backcourt mate Bobby Tribble added 15. Stevens was saddled with foul trouble and could manage only 15 points as Simeon won its first title 53-47. Evanston was back in 1986, facing heavily favored Martin Luther King of Chicago in the Friday quarterfinal. It was a classic duel to the closing seconds, settled when David Weatherall won it for King 64-62. After that, King was on its way. The Jaguars would face Rich Central of Olympia Fields and its outstanding guard, Kendall Gill. Marcus Liberty and Weatherall led the way for King as the Jaguars won the championship 47-40. King was favored to repeat in 1987. Liberty was outstanding all season, earning honors as National Player of the Year. No player ever had a final Saturday to match Liberty's. The smooth 6'8" forward scored 39 points as King beat St. Joseph 60-58. He added 41 in the finals against East St. Louis Lincoln, but the tournament belonged to neither Liberty nor King.
LaFonso Ellis Booth.
It's well documented. East St. Louis, Illinois, across the Mississippi River from the Gateway Arch of St. Louis, Missouri, is the poorest city in the United States. It's a place where existence itself is grim, often barely livable. But the dynamics of athletic competition are hard at work in the high schools of East St. Louis. East St. Louis Senior High School has won 4 state football championships and finished second 3 times since that competition began in 1974. Across town, Lincoln won 4 state basketball titles in the 80s, the last 3 in succession. The question, why?
We've been getting good players. Guys really want to play, and the guys want to come here. We've had other players that's, just as good as our players, but they didn't come here. They went, someplace else or to another system. And I don't think that they worked as hard as we have.
Whatever the reason, pride, desire, talent, Coach Lewis has achieved one of the most remarkable records anywhere. We already saw the Tigers' first title in 1982, but it really got going in 1987, coinciding with the development of 6'9" LaFonso Ellis.
He was our first legitimate All-American that we had, and he really brought, the recognition to us, that was due to us, because he was kind of a guy that could, was smart in his books. He had real good study habits. He was a nice guy. He didn't try to hog all the points. He always made sure that the other guys that was playing in the game got in the game and, got some recognition and scored or whatever. He was just that type of person.
Ellis was a dominant force as Lincoln shocked King with a big first half, climaxed by Ellis's 22-foot turnaround to take a 17-point lead. The Tigers kept it going and captured title number 2, first of the triple sequence, 79-62. 1988 was a year of challenge for the Tigers. Ellis was the only returning starter, but Coach Lewis filled the supporting cast and the push was on. The Tigers beat a fine Peoria Manual team 67-50. And then, in the nightcap, Ellis and Lincoln matched up against St. Francis de Sales of Chicago and Mr. Basketball, Eric Anderson. Ellis outscored Anderson 26-23. Sophomore Quanzo Martin added 20 and 10 rebounds, and Lincoln had its second straight title, 60-52. The biggest challenge to date for Coach Lewis came in 1989. With Ellis gone to Notre Dame, the leadership burden fell on Martin and senior Vincent Jackson, who would be the only player to play on 3 state champions. East St. Louis Lincoln was ranked second behind Chicago King and Peoria High as the 1989 AA tournament opened on St. Patrick's Day. The Leprechauns would work overtime in this one. It became apparent from the outset that a classic was in the works. Any of the 8 finalists had the ingredients to win it. The 2 days of the tournament would produce the finest display of high school basketball ever seen in the state of Illinois. It didn't seem that way in the opener, though, as Thorn Ridge and Townsend Orr seemed confused against powerful King. The Jaguars opened up behind the combination of All-America Jamie Brandon and inside forced Johnny Selvey to run off and hide. King won it 63-46 to establish post position as tournament favorite. In Game 2, the East St. Louis Lincoln Tigers danced with disaster against the Tomcats of East Aurora. Martin with 21 points and 31-point scorer Thomas Wyatt of East Aurora dueled in the early going. It was tied at 70 with 7 seconds left and the Tomcats in possession. East St. Louis Lincoln needed a miracle and got it thanks to the hustle of Sharif Ford.
It's up! It's good! It's good! It's good! Sharif Ford has won the game!
Now, Ford played wide receiver on the football team. So when Martin got the ball, he broke. And Martin threw it down and he got it and, hit the last shot. But now they said, well, it was a lucky shot. But Ford shoots that shot quite a bit, even in practice.
In the lower bracket, unbeaten Peoria High had all it could handle with Bloom's brilliant guard, Brandon Cole. Cole, with 25 points, gave Bloom a 61-60 lead with under a minute to go on this three-pointer from the top of the key. Peoria pulled out the 62-61 victory on Tyrone Howard's 12-footer.
He was everything we thought he was and then some. Okay, Brandon Cole was a great player, and when the game ended, our players had a great deal of respect.
Peoria High would face Tough Rock Island High in the semifinals. The Rocks beat New Trier 52-47 in Friday's closer to advance. Saturday's semifinal opener paired Lincoln against King. Brandon and Ahmad Sharif staked the Jaguars to a 1-point lead late in the first half. But Lincoln came back to take a 30-24 halftime lead, thanks in large part to this three-pointer from Vincent Jackson. Then, it was Martin taking control of the game for Lincoln. Brandon closed with a flourish, too late, as East St. Louis Lincoln advanced to the title game for the third straight year, 60-57. Meanwhile, Peoria High's Lions were on the prowl against the Rocks thanks to the play of All-America Chris Reynolds piloting the attack and the inside work of 6'1" Charles White and 6'6" center Mike Hughes. The Lions moved to the finals 52-47, setting up the showdown between unbeaten Peoria and defending two-time champion East St. Louis Lincoln, ranked no better than 7th at the end of the regular season.
Here were two teams that were 6'6", athletic, quick, strong, and go at each other. And that's exactly what the two teams did.
It was apparent from the opening tap, this would be a fight to the finish. Lincoln took a 21-20 lead with 2:36 left in the first half on Martin's move in the lane. Then the Lions went to work with White, then Hughes, and finally Reynolds on the break to take a 26-23 lead at the intermission.
I guess I felt that half of the game had gone about like I thought, a little better.
I said, okay, that's nothing to worry about. We just go in there, do what we're supposed to do, go back to playing the hard defense, taking the good shots, doing the things, blocking out on the boards, and you know, we'll get back in the ball game.
Trouble loomed for the Lions early in the fourth quarter when Martin made it 41-34 Lincoln. But Peoria High came back to tie it less than 3 minutes later on this lean-in by Hughes. It was Hughes again with 1:16 to go on the jumper. Lions by 2. The Tigers clawed back to tie it on this drive by Chris McKinney, setting up overtime, only the second in AA history. Lincoln got the break in the first overtime. Peoria High's Chris Reynolds was assessed a technical after complaining about a non-call. Rico Sylvester made both foul shots to give Lincoln a 50-48 lead. Reynolds missed a three-point winner with 6 seconds left. Lincoln knocked the ball out of bounds. Timeout Lions. After the timeout, Reynolds shot again. Mike Hughes cashed in. One overtime down, 50-50. In the second overtime, Martin gave Lincoln a 52-50 lead with 1:40 left. Hughes fed White for the short jumper with 1:13 left. Tied again. Peoria had a chance to win it with a final shot. Tyrone Howard let go. No good. 52-52 after 2 overtimes. Watch and listen to the third overtime.
Sylvester, an excellent free throw shooter, handles the ball a lot. McKinney's free, 10-footer, good! This is Charles White, and it's 3! And Central marches to the front. 1 minute. The Lions by 1. 3-point shot, good! Sylvester!
He shot that for lack of something to do with the ball.
Half a minute, third overtime. Reynolds is fouled.
Beyond McKinney.
He got a pair. 6 free throws in a row. 2 there in the guts of the game by Reynolds. 25 seconds to go. Triple overtime. Lincoln with the ball. Sylvester. He made a miraculous 3 moments ago.
Double team.
Jackson doubled up. McKinney, 14, 13. Under 10. Lincoln with the ball. This is Jackson with 3. Jackson lets fly. Goal! Jackson won the game. 3 in a row. Lincoln wins.
People don't think it's hard to win a state championship. Think again. We had an outstanding team that did, and he's won 3 in a row. And my hat's off to him.
Probably the best game I've ever played in. I had, seen playing in, all coaching. It was probably the best game I've ever seen.
There are many outstanding athletic competitions, the World Series, the Super Bowl, Stanley Cup, NBA, NCAA Finals, to name just a few. As great as these events are, one that's been running since 1908 and is gaining new momentum as we move into the 90s is alive and well and thriving each spring in Illinois, March Madness. I'm Tom Kelly, thanking you for joining us in our look at one of the finest events of its type anywhere, the Illinois High School Association Basketball Tournament. And now the honor roll of state champions.